All right, so in this video, you're going to see the Israeli government spokesman David Mencer's absolute train wreck of an interview. He melts down, viciously attacks the journalist, and ends by defending a notorious far-right extremist by the name of Tommy Robinson. If you enjoy seeing videos like this, hit the like and subscribe button, and don't forget to press the notification bell so you never miss a video. Now let's watch this together, and then I'll give my 2 cents at the end.
Good to be with you, Kamali. I'm speaking to you from the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem. I can tell you that there was a profound sense of shock in this country at that awful attempt, at that awful terrorist attack, and also the fact that, unfortunately, the Jewish worshippers were hit by police gunfire as well. That was also pretty shocking. But ultimately, the shock goes only up to a certain point, because these were attacks that Jews around the world, not least in the UK, expected. They are the result of the rhetoric of the government. And unfortunately, whether the government like it or not in the UK, the terrorists went to do the act thinking that they had the backing of the British government. Whether the government's intention was that or not, the terrorist did the act thinking he had the backing of the British government. He also probably thought that he had the backing of the BBC. He probably thought he had the backing of Sky News as well, because of this excessive demonization of Israel, which you guys have been engaged in for the last 2 years.
David, I really wish that we hadn't descended into an attack on the organisation or onto the BBC. I understand the point you're making, but you'll know that Sky News will reject that accusation. I'm sure the government will reject that accusation. I'm sure the BBC will as well. I do want to move on to the situation in Gaza, but just because of the comment there, the result of rhetoric, do you think that this individual felt like he had the backing of the UK government? I mean, David Mencer, you know the UK government, you know David Lammy personally. You don't seriously think, do you, that Sir Keir Starmer, David Lammy, Shabana Mahmood, anyone in this government or the previous government, through their actions, would give any kind of a justification for this individual's acts?
Kamali, I'll tell you how British Jews feel, and I can also tell you how Israel feels. Israel feels that weakness on behalf of the government, giving in to terrorist demands, calling for a Palestinian state directly as a result of the October 7th massacre, which Hamas themselves thanked the British government for. Hamas thanked the British government for that declaration. All of those actions mean that the terrorist, unfortunately, did his dastardly deed thinking, however misguided, thinking that he had the backing of the British government. Now, if you want to play a constructive role in this conflict, then the only constructive role to play is to call on Hamas to release our hostages now. You don't need a deal to do that. That just proves you're a human being. And for Hamas to lay down their arms, that would bring an end to this conflict in an instant.
And again, I'm sure the government will reject that point. But David, let's move on then to the situation in Gaza. The Israeli Prime Minister overnight said all the hostages are close to being released. He said it hopes it will happen within the Feast of the Tabernacle. I understand that's up to the 13th of October. Bombing has continued overnight and this morning. Donald Trump had called for that to end. Will the bombing end?
Israel and the US are working side by side. You would have seen that partnership in play. I saw it with my own eyes at the White House just last week. The Prime Minister and the President are in extremely regular discussions, very regular contact, precisely because we want our hostages out straight away, all of them in one go, not in drips and drabs. 48 of them, unfortunately, are still there. 20 of them, we believe, are still alive. All of them need to be released. Now, when it comes to aspects of this deal, Israel will, of course, adhere to, and Israel is adhering to this deal. It is now all eyes on Hamas. Will this dastardly terrorist organization indeed go ahead and release our hostages? Will they indeed lay down their arms? Will they indeed provide some respite for their own people? Never mind the people of Israel, their own people who they have sacrificed in the most inhumane way.
David Mencer, will the bombing stop then?
Israel will act completely within the confines of this deal. Israel has always accepted every negotiation process. So when there is a call for there to be a cessation of fire, for there to stop to be...
Well, Donald Trump said exactly that a couple of days ago, didn't he?
So again, you're taking the line of Hamas, Kamali, which you've done consistently. I'll give you that. You are consistent,
That's
Kamali.
not fair. Donald
Yes,
Trump
it is
said
fair.
that.
Yes, it is fair. Yes, it is fair,
Trump
Kamali.
said
You
the
have
bombing should stop.
consistently taken the line of Hamas. Israel always.
In what regard have I taken the line of Hamas? I hope that you and I are going to have a constructive conversation today.
Yes, I'm
David
happy to
Mencer.
have a constructive
So don't accuse me of taking the line of a terror group.
Yes, well, that's exactly what you have done consistently. For the last 2 years,
Donald
you have
Trump
taken that
said
line.
Israel
Kamali,
should
this
stop
is
the
not our
bombing.
first rodeo. We've had many conversations, and I've heard you repeat back to me Hamas rhetoric again and again. You can shake
Donald
your hand
Trump's
if you want to.
rhetoric.
You, as a media, also bear some responsibility for the attacks on Jews
I'm not going to allow you to do that.
Yes,
I'm not
you
going to allow you to
can.
do that,
Yes,
David
yes,
Mencer. No,
yes,
we're
you
not.
can do what
Okay,
you want.
let's get some specifics, can we? Because you're attacking me for some reason when I'm trying to get some answers from you as a spokesperson for the Israeli government. So, strikes have continued. You're not telling me when those strikes will stop. Currently, the Israeli military covers about 80% of the enclave. The idea, I think, is to withdraw to about 15%. Now, both sides seem to be waiting for the other side to do something. Hamas haven't announced that they will disarm. Israel hasn't fully said that it will withdraw. As the democracy in the situation, is it incumbent upon Israel to withdraw and allow international actors to come in and ensure that the terror group disarm?
Kamali, the first aspect of this deal is the release of our hostages. Everything follows from that fact. It's as simple as that. It isn't complicated. The first aspect of this deal, which is why Israel's people are behind it and why Israel's government is behind it, is the release of all of our hostages. Once that happens, then the subsequent aspects of this agreement will come into place. Israel will always agree to act within the confines of the agreement, as we always have. As you rightly said, we are a democracy, and Israel will always act within the parts of that agreement. Unfortunately, Hamas, through their actions, have proved again and again that they are the terrorist organization. They've been true to their name. Whether the BBC or indeed you, Sky, call them a terrorist organization, they are a terrorist organization. The best thing that could happen right now is for our hostages to be released as quickly, as soon as possible, 20 alive, unfortunately the dead for a decent burial, to be returned home to Israel, and then every single other aspect of that 20-point plan can come into play.
Now, of course, there were huge protests yet again in Tel Aviv demanding the hostages be released. You'll know that Hamas on the other side are looking for Palestinian prisoners to be released. Are we clear as to who will be part of that release of Palestinian prisoners?
Kamali, I'm not going to discuss that, the details of that part of the deal. It is. Let me give you, so I can answer all of your questions. Every single aspect of the deal that we've worked together with the Americans will be adhered to. We are talking about extremely painful exchanges. We're talking about the release of our innocent civilian hostages for murderers in our prisons. People that have committed murder, people that have been convicted of murder, or Hamas terrorists that we've captured during this conflict with the terrorist organization in Gaza. These are very, very difficult things for Israelis to handle, to deal with, to come to terms with. But we believe that a human life is the most important, is of course sacrosanct. So we want to bring all of our hostages home. And because of that fact, we are willing to release even murderers, people with blood on their hands, people that say that they wish to carry out attacks again and again and again.
Of course, women and children have also been held in Israeli jails as a result of this. Now, I just want to finish by asking you
Kamali, perhaps you could share with me these. Kamali, perhaps you could share with these women and children you feel are in Israeli captivity. Israel is a democracy. When we take actions, when there have been terrorist attacks carried out by children, yes, it is possible. A 17-year-old is still considered a child, but still has carried out terrorist attacks. This is a democracy. So those throwaway marks that we somehow lock up women and children, it's outrageous. It's a slur, and is part of the reason that Israel and Jews have been demonized in the UK because of those slurs.
I'm amazed that you're still suggesting that about me, David Mencer. But let me just ask you this final question. An Israeli minister, Amichai Chikli, has invited Tommy Robinson to Israel, calling him a courageous leader. Why is Tommy Robinson, a man who's been convicted in this country for incitement to racism and terrorism, being invited to Israel?
Well, whether Tommy Robinson comes to Israel or not, Tommy is part of British culture. I noted that he brought on the streets of the UK hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. So this is really a question for the UK, how it deals with...
Someone within your government's inviting him, calling him courageous.
Well, anyone that stands up against Islamism, we
the Board of Deputies call him a thug.
Yeah, and I represent the state of Israel, and anyone that stands up to fight Islamism, whether on the streets of the UK or on the streets of Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, we consider to be worth talking to, because Islamism, unfortunately, cannot be appeased, as unfortunately the government of Keir Starmer are in the process of doing.
All right.
Islamism cannot be appeased. It must be stood up to.
David Mencer, that's all the time we have.
Thank you.
All right, so notice the three key tactics Mencer used right out of the gate. First was the preemptive blame. Before answering a single question about the conflict, he immediately blames the UK government, the BBC and Sky News for a terrorist attack. It's a classic propaganda technique of poisoning the well. You discredit the questioner before they can even ask the question. Second was the ad hominem attack. When Kamali asked him a direct question about the bombing, a question prompted by Donald Trump's statement, not Hamas's, what does Mencer do? He doesn't answer, he attacked Kamali personally. You're taking the line of Hamas, he said. He said it's over. He said this over and over. Why? Because if he can make the conversation about the presenter, he doesn't have to answer the question about his government's actions. It's a desperate, bad faith attempt to silence a journalist. Silence the messenger, effectively. And third was the shocking finale, embracing the extremist. This is the moment the mask really comes off. Kamali asked why an Israeli minister is praising Tommy Robinson and inviting him to have an audience with the Israeli government. Now, remember that Tommy Robinson is a convicted racist thug. And instead of condemning Robinson, Mencer's response was to legitimize him, calling anyone who, and I quote, stands up to Islamism as somebody worth talking to. He just put a government stamp of approval on one of the UK's most notorious far-right agitators. It's an absolutely stunning admission. What we witnessed there from David Mencer was a typical Israeli spokesperson system failure. His only defense against basic scrutiny was to scream, deflect, and align his government with extremists. And this is, so what are your thoughts about Mencer's meltdown? The personal attacks, the constant deflection, or the defense of Tommy Robinson? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button for more. And don't forget to press the notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching.